Well, hi, Therese. How you doing?
Well, hello, Natalie. How are you? I'm
I'm doing
fine.
great. I'm doing
Yeah.
great. I'm looking forward to this episode today. What are we talking about?
We are talking about chaos creating CEOs.
Yeah.
So this came up because you read an article that we honestly tried to find right before hitting record and gave up. So you read an article about this and we were like, oh, that's interesting. And so we thought we would talk about it.
Yeah.
So where do we want to start?
Well, I know it's an Harvard Business Review article where I read them, and if anybody wants to go search for it, just put leadership chaos, and you'll get many options of good articles. I would love to talk about. I want to have a question.
Okay.
Well, I'm just going to work off the assumption, and actually, it's an assumption I know is true because we talk about it. We have both experienced this
Mm-hmm.
from multiple angles.
Yeah.
Some of the time, in my case, being the somewhat chaotic leader at times, and other times working with them in a more consultant um, capacity, and then also having bosses ourselves. Have
Yeah.
you? Why do you think? Shoot from the hip. Why the hell does this happen?
I think 2 reasons. Either A, like an overabundance of excitement and passion and like need to kind of make a footprint. And then I think B, fear and lack of confidence. That's what
Mm,
I think. What
hmm
about you? What do you think?
I think it has a lot to do with. Uh, in my experience, I've noticed a lot of it to do with being in an environment that's really hot, like very urgent. There's a lot of urgency in these environments, particularly in healthcare, but I've seen it in other industries.
Yeah,
And unless the leader or CEO is intentional about not falling into the urgency disguised or anxiety disguised as urgency trap, it'll
yeah,
suck you right in. And so
yeah.
all these new ideas coming out really fast and making everything feel high priority, that leads to a lot of chaos.
I think too, now that you said that, you just said something about I don't even remember what you said, it was 5 seconds ago, but something about uncertainty. I
Yeah.
do think that chaos happens when you're being reactive, because maybe you didn't anticipate or you weren't strategic enough, or things are just chaotic around you and you're reacting and trying to you're in defense mode.
Yeah.
So I think that's probably another scenario where it may seem as if the CEO is causing chaos, but they're just reacting to what's happening.
Yeah.
Obviously, they still have some responsibility there, but yeah, I think that's another thing. So because we said that this podcast was not going to be just the regular, here are the 10 tips of leaders, blah, blah, blah. This is really meant to be like the conversations that we should be having that we don't want to have. Why are we talking about this? What's our spin on this? What are you thinking? What are the things that we're not talking about or saying about our chaotic
Yeah.
CEOs?
Two thoughts here. The first one is I think a lot of it is disguised as brilliance and genius, visionary, like thinking. And the
Mhm.
other one is I know I've worked with people who had uh, personality disorders.
Yeah.
That's a chaotic situation to work within. And if you are the leader working alongside them, both of these things are pretty sensitive topics to bring up because you don't want to yuck someone's yum or crush their spirit when they are big thinker, especially if they own the company. And then on the flip side, you certainly don't want to appear to be discriminatory or insensitive in any way. And also, a lot of times people don't see it. You see it. The people
So
doing it don't see it.
did you just say yuck their yum?
I said yuck their yum. Yeah,
What
don't
the
yuck.
what the hell is that? What does that mean? Yuck. Where is that from?
I
What
don't
is
know.
that?
I'm not sure where it's from. Um, yuck
Yuck
their
their
yum.
yum.
Like if
Mhm.
somebody's like, my favorite thing to do is ideate. I
Mhm.
love a good brainstorm sesh. But the
Mhm.
problem is they are the person in charge of setting the direction of the organization.
Yeah.
It'll feel to them like you're crushing their spirit, but in reality, there is a time and place for that yum, and it is not all the time.
Yeah, yeah. So another thing too that I think that leads to some of this, and what we're not talking enough about, and this may be an unpopular thought, I just thought of it. So I work with a lot of startups. So I tend to work with a lot of owner operators. So they own the business, but they're in the business. And I
Mhm.
think, my opinion only, I have zero of anything to back up my opinion, but I'm just going to say it. I think oftentimes when you're working with an owner operator, they started the business because they're more of a doer, they're a builder, they're a creator,
Mhm.
and that doesn't always necessarily translate into being excellent leaders. So what happens is because they're builders, doers, creators, their business starts to build. It starts to get bigger and scale, and it's successful because they're scrappy. They're boots on the ground. They're doing the things, but then as the business grows, they're almost applying that same mindset and skill set into the people side of the business, and it doesn't work because
Yes.
people generally do not like to work in chaotic environments, and they don't like to come in every day and hear that there's this new angle that we're taking. There's this new initiative. We're going to change what we just changed last week. People don't like that. So I think
Mhm.
that's another piece is that you may be fully capable. You're extremely talented. You are not like any there are no issues with you. It's just the person that you are and how you've grown or created this beautiful business. It doesn't necessarily translate into how you lead people. Does that make
Yeah,
sense?
100%. Not all founders are leaders. Not all people leaders. Not all founders are
Yep.
people leaders, and most of those founders end up becoming the CEO, either intentionally or de facto. And there is a lot of people skills that come with leading an organization as it grows. And
Yep.
it's kind of like we need to we have to start to reward stability. But when does
Yep.
that start? It often doesn't start with the founder. It starts
Right.
with the people the founder hires, if they hire well.
If they hire well.
Hmm.
And oftentimes the friction occurs when they're hiring people and they're expecting these people to be like them,
Yeah.
right?
Or they aren't willing. They've hired a person because they aren't like them, and then they won't step aside.
They won't let things go. Okay, ooh,
Yeah,
yes. So
that's a
let's
good.
let's let's talk about that. So what are all the people saying that report to these chaotic CEOs? What's that experience like? What's happening?
Yeah. In my experience, I've heard things like, there's a lot of respect because the person has ideas that the rest of the team doesn't have. And so
Mhm.
they're like, at what point do we get to bring up that this is uncomfortable? At
Yeah.
what point do we stop celebrating? So I think there's a lot of
No
inner
point.
discussion. Yeah, there's a
Mhm.
lot of inner discussion that maybe the this chaotic leader is not hearing. They may
Yeah.
not be hearing it, but the rest of the C-suite or the leadership team or whoever, they're all talking about it.
Well, some of them are talking about it because I think that there are also the people who have been with that CEO forever
Yeah.
who, they're like family. And so they actually they're okay with it because it benefits them quite a bit as well.
Yeah.
And what I mean by that is, if I report to Natalie, but I've been here with CEO Kathy for way longer than Natalie, if Natalie says or does anything I don't really like, I'm going to Kathy
Mhm.
because I've been with Kathy since day one. So
Yeah.
I'll get what I want anyways. But that's a different, I'm going off on a tangent there. But getting back to the experience of the people who report to the CEOs, what
Mhm.
does that domino effect look like? So you just said, like, hey, look, everybody's talking about it and everyone's kind of like, at what point are we saying that this is uncomfortable? But what's the domino effect of that
Mm.
behavior?
Uh, Lack of trust, for sure. Lack of trust in the process.
Yeah, disengagement, I
Mhm.
think. And then eventually you lose really good
Great
people.
people.
Yeah,
Mhm.
yeah. So I have a scenario where I worked with a client. It might have been like 4 years ago, probably over that. Um, he was owner operator. He was very passionate, very good. I mean, just brilliant, brilliant man. Really great at what he did, and he built this company from the ground up. And he had about, I think, like maybe 60 employees or something like that. And I really went in there just to help with some operational things, but quickly, I mean, within the first 2 days, discovered that probably about 80% of his workforce was unhappy. And they were
Mhm.
all essentially looking for another position or they just didn't want to be there anymore. And it was because of that same mentality that helped him be successful was the same mentality that was driving away like a lot of good employees. And it was
Yeah.
because he's so passionate, because he's, and you and I know this, right? We are also owner operators. And so you never shut off ever. You're always thinking, researching, reading, looking, talking about your business in some way. But what he was doing is every conversation, every video he saw, every article, every new trend, he was coming in and saying, "Hey, look, we need to shift things because this is what is happening in the industry." But he never let anything take enough time to either fail or succeed before he
Mm,
changed it again. And that was how his kind of chaotic approach was really causing just this very unhappy culture. And he was oblivious. He was
yeah.
oblivious.
I'm wondering if there's an element there to needing to be needed. What do you think?
Yeah,
Yeah.
1,000%.
Yeah.
But not just needing to be needed, but this is my baby.
Yep.
And
Interjecting.
nobody's gonna take care of my baby that I birthed like I would.
Yeah.
And on some level, I guess that's true.
Mhm.
But I think that's also where like hiring the right people and having like trusting people around you, like trustworthy people, I think that has something to do with it. But yeah, I think the needing to be needed thing is a big one
Yeah.
for
I think
sure.
when leaders who especially leaders who are founders,
Yeah.
it's natural to insert yourself into everything
Mhm.
because
Mhm.
you were everything at one point in time. And the chaos in it, whether it's intentional or inadvertent, helps to keep you relevant. And it starts to become a bottleneck. And if your entire team has to depend on you, you don't necessarily have a team. You have you and a giant bottleneck and then several layers down the team who can help.
Yep.
It's a
And
difficult process.
the domino effect goes both ways, right? So the domino effect happens in the workplace. People become disengaged. They're not happy. They're leaving. They're underperforming, whatever, all the things. But there's a domino effect with you as well as the CEO, right? It leads to burnout. If you have to approve everything, if everything needs to go through you, if everyone's waiting on you to say yay or nay, you are the bottleneck, right? Like you
Yeah,
said, but that leads to burnout.
totally.
When do you ever get a day off? When do you ever get to be sick? When do you ever
Mhm.
get to take your wife to dinner? When
Yeah,
does that happen?
it
When does that
doesn't.
happen?
And that's the big issue there is that it becomes your role becomes vague at that
Mhm,
point because you are
mhm.
a little bit of everything all the time, but not officially any of that. So a leader, and I think this
Yeah,
also goes down to it comes back to some poor communication skills, whether it's written communication, like an
yeah,
actual SOP or whatever, or if it's verbal communication saying, here's the project I have started. This is what I have envisioned for it. I'm going to hand this off to you now.
mhm.
Like, if you don't have a very direct and clear discussion around what the expectations are, if you are a leader who is uncomfortable having those discussions, you're more likely to just hold on to these things. And before you know it again, you may as well only have you
Yeah,
as an employee.
yeah, but the thing is, you can write all the SOPs you want,
Mhm.
but if you're gonna bypass that and do whatever the hell you
Totally.
want any damn way,
You
then
gotta
it
hire somebody that'll call your ass on it.
so that's the thing, what are your I know I'm asking you a lot of questions, but I'm just like, "What about this? What about this?"
I love it.
But what is your thought on an owner operator also being like the CEO, president? Like
Yeah.
what w
I don't wanna I think it really is dependent upon the person's personality.
yeah,
Are they a true founder? Or are they a true people leader? I think there can you can be both. I think you can be both, but I think you have to know when to be which one. I don't know. That's a difficult. That's
it is.
let me noodle on it. How about you? What's your take?
Yeah, I feel the same. I do think though, like, and I don't know when the when is, but I think once you hit a certain level, like
Hmm.
in terms of scale, I think the responsible thing to do to find someone else who is maybe not quite at your level, but almost at your level where they have the same decision making rights, all
Mhm.
those things. And maybe they function more as either like an operations person or a people like, chief people officer. I don't
Yeah.
know, something like
Bring in
that.
a
Or
COO.
an OO. Yeah. Like an operate, like a COO or someone who can start to be your like, hey, look, you
Mhm.
continue to be that visionary, that dream maker, like continue to do that. You can still be a big part of the business, but I'm over here to make sure that we have checks and balances in place to protect you
Yep.
and to protect your baby. Right. So I'm going half on this baby with you, essentially.
Mhm.
So I do think I don't mind you. I don't think it matters if you're a CEO or president as an owner operator, but I do think once you hit a specific level, the moment you can afford it and it makes
Mhm.
sense, you've got to put somebody and not somebody who's been with you since day one. You've got to get somebody in who has been doing this at a big on a bigger scale than your business so they can come in and bring a lot of that into your business to level you up, to scale you
Yeah.
up. So I do think at some point you have to like, I'm not at that level to have a COO
Mhm.
yet, you
Yeah.
know? But once you get there, and I don't know when that is, but
Yeah.
I think you owe it to yourself, you owe it to your team, you owe it to the business to get somebody in that can take a big chunk of that off. And quite honestly, that's where I see a lot of owner operators struggle is that
Yeah.
they struggle to give a lot of that to someone else. They hire people around them, they hire directors, managers, they may even hire some C-suite people, but none of them necessarily have the autonomy to make any
Yeah.
big decisions.
Something I've seen be helpful with that is I think we've talked about it before, maybe not on this podcast. I've had a few clients who use, EOS, which is the
Mhm.
entrepreneurial operating system, and it's like
Yep.
a I don't know, it's a whole formal program that you buy
Yep.
into, and it has really clearly defined roles, and one of them is visionary, and in almost every
Mhm.
situation, that ends up being the founder. And
Yep.
so it puts the founder in this official or CEO, whatever, in this official visionary, like ideator role. But then there's
Yep.
an extremely important position called the integrator. And the
Yeah.
integrator is more of a COO function.
That's
They
right.
really are the one that helps the team make the decisions. They
Mhm.
do serve as the final decision maker if a decision needs to be made. But the visionary has to be willing to hand that over, and it is
That's right.
an extremely integral position, but I've seen it work wonders. I've seen it
It
actually help
is.
rein in some more, like, dreamy,
Right.
idealistic visionaries and
Yep.
founders. It's helped real I
Yeah,
love it.
because they call the rocks. You define your
Yep.
different rocks and you do your L10s every week,
Yeah.
and
It's
it's really
great.
kind of like, is all of the activity designed to move the rocks,
Mhm.
essentially.
And it
And
without the
that's
visionary being the bottleneck.
yes, exactly, without the visionary being the bottleneck. Still a big part of the organization's success, obviously,
Yeah.
but very defined, very
Yeah.
defined. Um Yeah, so I mean, that's kind of like that's my thought on the whole owner operator CEO thing. I think that's important because I mean, so here's my thing. So I own my own business like you,
Mhm.
and I had an assistant like you,
Mhm.
and it wasn't successful
Like
like you.
like me. Mine was
And
successful for this long.
mine was successful for not at all. And initially, no, look, the behind the scene, this backstory to that. But granted, that this was not a good fit. This person was not a good fit. All those things, but I do think I was creating a lot of chaos as well because I didn't necessarily probably define success for this person, and I didn't necessarily have the tools and the process in place for this person to be successful. So, although this wasn't a good fit, she wasn't a great fit, I didn't help
Mhm.
because every week I was just kind of like, well, okay, I know we talked about this one
What
strategy,
about
but
this?
why don't we
What
try
about that?
this? Why don't we try that? What about this? What about that? Right?
I but
So, I as a person who has and I do think that there are chaos creating managers, chaos creating VPs, chaos
oh,
creating
yeah.
directors, and I've been guilty of probably doing all of those on some level at some point. So I do think as the person who was the chaos creating CEO, it's really hard for people to know what the target is. Like,
Yeah.
how do we yeah, because every week we're changing it.
Yeah.
So
And
how do we even know when we're being, like, successful?
well, I just wanna make the point that what you and I have had to intentionally do, because we do tend to have the same brain, which is
Good and
wild
not so good.
wildly creative, and then we're like, "Well, who's gonna do it? Who's gonna do that for us now?"
Mhm. Yep,
We've had to put a lot of intention into this podcast because we have
big
love a
time.
good idea,
Yes.
and then we're like, "Now what?" But,
Now what?
as
Yeah,
far as being the chaos creating either CEO or leader in some capacity, that's definitely been me. 100% been me. I had
yep,
in this business, I did have a VA who was awesome, but
yes,
I could never move past, uh, it was always like basic define social media stuff that I could just get off my plate. I had a
yep,
hard time creating boundaries around stuff of what I wanted to be involved in and what I didn't want to be involved in. Um, and then going back to when I was in a leadership role and had a large team of clinicians reporting to me, I can tell you
yeah,
I was a damn good manager and leader during COVID because it was chaos,
same.
perfected chaos in a horrible,
Yeah,
terrible situation. But like, come to
yeah,
me. I'm going to rally the troops. I'm going to keep us focused. But then when that
mhm,
started to settle, like a year and a half in, it, stability is what was obviously the most important for everyone. And that was like, I had to downshift. I had to pump the brakes big time because I was loving this kind of like no rules, all the rules, figure out what your own boundaries are sort of environment. And
yeah,
that's just not a that's not long term any kind of environment to operate in for most people.
yeah, yeah. But you
Learn
you
new
bring up a
stuff.
good point though too, and I think as the CEO, you got to do some work to figure out like in what environments you thrive in because I know that that's me too. And my daughter Zoe is very much like that too, where she's like, give me a job as a waitress at happy hour during, like,
Yeah.
Mardi Gras any day over giving me a job at, like, the library, because I
Yeah.
will
Or
die. Like,
data entry.
I need a certain level of chaos to thrive because it gets my energy going, my creativity. I'm just, like, working, like, all of my muscles are
Yeah.
moving, and so
That's
I do think you have to kind of understand, like, okay, is part of it because you like the thrill of the hunt? Like you like the energy of the
mhm.
chaos on some level. And I think you're right. I mean, just again, going back to this podcast, you and I have been talking about this podcast now.
It's been probably a couple years.
Okay.
This
And we have started how many times?
this is our third
I
time recording this topic, I think. So
yeah.
far it's going better though than the other two. Let's
Yeah,
just
yeah,
say
yeah, yeah,
that.
yeah,
We're
yeah, yeah,
killing it.
yeah. Yeah, but that was the thing, like, our energy, like, the brainstorming, the having the ideas, like, coming up with a
Love
list
it.
of things, like, we were all in, and then getting us to nail down time to record, that was a challenge.
Yeah.
And then the after work, that's every single time where it kinda fell apart for us.
We're
Not
still
just
like,
because we're yeah, not because we're lazy, but because we had other things going on, but
yeah.
that part wasn't as exciting,
Yeah.
right? I mean,
Yeah.
show notes and sitting on Canva. Girl, I was on Canva last night for like 3 hours trying to put our freaking promo video together.
But we look cute though.
We do.
We look good.
This is true. And nobody said anything about how we look. We always look fantastic.
Yeah.
But just doing that. So I think it's important to for you to recognize as a CEO, like what's your jam? Like what you like,
Yeah.
but it's also you gotta recognize that not everybody's like you, and so if that's what you like, then stay in that space, that's where you thrive, but you gotta get somebody else that likes doing that other junk that you don't like to
Yeah.
do so that things don't fall off because you'll end up being like Natalie and me where this podcast has been delayed for 2 years
Yeah.
and that's probably what's happening in your business is you're not accomplishing the things that you want to because you're always coming up with the next best fantastic brilliant idea.
Yeah. Get yourself an ideas book. Write that down. Uh, you know what? You
Yeah, but
got me.
that requires some structure.
Yeah, but then you got to go back and read it too. So never
Yeah,
mind.
I'm not doing and then it's like then I'm going to have 10 books, right?
I have. We
Me
talked
too.
about it. We
Sit,
talked about it.
sit,
We talked
sit.
about it.
Really? Are we doing this? Girl, are we doing this?
We are doing this.
do,
I got
do,
so many.
do,
I got more.
so don't write it
Okay,
down.
that's insane. Don't
Yeah,
do that.
don't do
But you know what you got me thinking about when you were talking
what?
like the environment in which you thrive or your
Yeah.
kind of chosen environment? Um,
Hmm.
I had never connected these dots before, but I've not worked for many clinical managers or like chiefs of departments who got their career started in an ICU. And I was an
Okay.
ICU queen. I could
Yeah.
not wait to open up that medical record and see like what wacky stuff do we have going on here. And it was this like
Yeah.
weird adrenaline rush of the
Yep.
unknown
Yep.
and then the potentially really bad. Like, how can I have an impact? Where can I make a difference? That
Hmm.
was, but then they they leave the ICU and thankfully they don't discharge up. They hopefully discharge out to
Yeah.
the other
Yeah.
floors and then I hand them
Yep.
off. I'm done. That
Yep.
was what I did for years, like a long, long time, over a
Hmm.
decade. And that really was, if I had been this insightful when I was sitting in that chair where we were trying to like figure out how to be less chaotic and more focused when I was in the clinical supervisor position, probably would have been a lot easier for me to understand
But
because I
it's
just connected
true.
those dots now. Yeah, it is true. It's
Yeah, it
very true.
is. It is. It is. And I mean, it was the same thing for me. I started off in the hospitals,
Yep.
right? And that was, I mean,
You choose your
chaos.
environment for a reason.
Yeah, but I loved it. I loved it. I worked for a transplant hospital. I was like getting those 2 a.m. calls. We had to do emergency credentialing for a kidney transplant. You have to run, go to the hospital.
You're
You're
giving me
doing all the things.
butterflies in my
Yes.
stomach. I'm so excited right now.
Yes, exactly. I loved all of
Crazy.
that stuff. Yeah. So, and that's probably why we both decided to start our own business on some level
Yeah.
because it was scary, it was fast paced, it was fun. We could do whatever we want. But that's probably why, for the both of us, we haven't accomplished a lot of the things that we wanted to
Mhm.
because when it comes to settling down and actually being a little bit more focused and intentional, that's where we
Yep.
struggle.
It's that
Right.
whole chop wood, carry water. Chop
Yeah,
wood, carry water. The boring
exactly.
stuff that makes the difference, that keeps the village alive.
Exactly, exactly, and that's why, like, one of my friends Kara, Kara,
Yeah.
yeah, and she's like, "Girl, I don't know how you do what you do," because she's always in awe of the fact that I start preparing for speaking engagements, like, maybe a week before, and she's like, "How the heck do you do that? How are you making changes? How are you writing?" And it's like, because I feel like if I have 6 months to prepare for something, uh, I'm not gonna focus.
Mm-mm.
But if I have a week, I just lock in and I'm
Yeah.
in the zone and I get it done and it's
Yeah.
exciting for me. So I
It
don't know,
keeps you up at night. We
maybe
wake
I
up
need
in the
to see
middle
a
of the night.
therapist. Maybe I
Well, I
should
mean,
see
of
a
course, we all
therapist.
do, of course.
Well,
But
that's
until
true.
then, let's just talk about it.
Maybe I need to see another one because I do too, but maybe I need another one,
Well,
like,
I
at
think
the
there's
same time.
really that idea of because we're speaking to some degree about procrastination, but it's like intentional. It is to give
Yeah.
ourselves a deadline, and we are like creating. There is a discipline that comes from creating your own deadline versus having an external deadline.
Yep.
And this is a constant practice for me. I
Yep.
constantly have to work on setting and upholding my own created deadlines because I have within 3 days of each other. I have two speaking engagements, and they
Yep.
are about two vastly different things.
Yes.
I have started one of them.
Yes.
I've
And when
started
is
one
it?
of them.
Tomorrow.
No,
No, I'm just kidding.
no,
Just kidding.
it's 3
Just
weeks.
kidding.
So, I see,
Yeah.
3 weeks though,
Yeah.
because I've given myself the deadline of 10 days ahead of time, I'm gonna share the
Yep.
sides.
Yep.
10 days, give or take a few days, we'll figure it out as I get there, but I had to create that deadline, and I think a lot of people it takes a lot of intention, and you almost have to have a support system, like you and I reminding each other, like, "Hey,
Yep.
knock that shit off," or
Yeah.
"Sleep
That's okay.
off. You're
Yeah,
grown up."
yep. Mhm, mhm, mhm. Yeah, no, it's so but that's the thing too, right? It's like when we have deadlines for other people, no problem.
No
We're
problem.
early, but when it
Mhm.
comes to our own stuff, it's different. And I think it's just because it's not because of laziness, it's honestly because my brain gets filled with the next brilliant idea I have because my ideas are pretty freaking brilliant. I
I
mean,
mean,
just gonna
no arguments, they
I'm
are.
just saying,
Yeah.
and so are yours. I mean, I think that's why we're friends, right? No? Yeah?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think so.
And our
Anyways,
husbands really love each other, there's that too,
they
they're
do
buddies. They're buddies.
They
So
do. We force them into being friends. It's
and you know
great.
what? If we wanna talk about, like, the anti-chaos, it
Oh
is our
god.
husbands. They
It
are the
really is.
anti-chaos.
Really. It's like was it you I was talking to where it was like our husbands are the turtles
Mhm,
and we're the rabbits.
mhm. I
And
don't know
we're
if it
just like
was me,
I
but
was like,
yes.
we're all over the place. They're just like, okay.
We're running laps and they're
We're
like,
doing all the things and we just can't get to the finish line. And they're just like,
because 'cause we're
I think
distracted, girl.
because we're all over the place,
Because we got that
but
stuff
in
from
a good
TJ
way.
Maxx we have to return, and so
Yeah.
while we're heading to the finish line, "Wait, let me stop real quick to do that." And then that's
Mhm.
next to, like, I don't know, like a Home
Exactly.
Goods, and so you're like, "Well, I gotta go
Stop in
there."
there. Yep, yep, and then that Home Goods reminds you that you never made that dental appointment, so now you have
So,
to get on the call, but then when you open your phone, you see a text from Natalie,
yep.
and it's a link to Instagram, so now you're on Instagram, and then you start thinking about being perimenopausal, and then you're like, "What happened to my life?" And then
Mhm.
it's just this whole thing,
God, our
and it all
brains are the
started on
same.
yeah.
So
So it's so
but it
anyways,
is.
we've
It's the
we've
chaos.
totally taken I guess we've just shown
We
you in real life what chaos looks like.
we
It's
just
just we just literally did it because I don't even remember what we're talking about. What we're
our husbands.
no, chaotic CEOs.
Yes, yes,
Okay,
yes,
yeah, but our
and
husbands,
we
yes, and they're the opposite.
but that was a perfect
Mhm,
demonstration of the inside of what a chaotic situation can look like, but, like,
mhm.
we still get it done. But
Still
that's
get it
because we
done.
don't have a ton of people that are reporting up to us in our businesses right now. So we can operate in this way right now. But
Yeah,
when organizations reach out to you or me to do some consulting work, they are well past where we are right now.
absolutely.
Well past it. And some of them still have the natural inclination to operate in the husbands to TJ Maxx to Home Goods to dentist to Instagram pipeline.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. But I will say that even when you don't have people reporting to you, your chaotic approach as a CEO will hurt your business on some level, and I'm living proof of that one,
Mm. I think
right?
we both are to some extent.
Yeah,
And then also, we are examples of what self awareness looks like. So, self awareness is great. Well,
sort of.
I think so. Self awareness is great, but then if it's beginning and ending with self awareness, you aren't
Uh-huh.
making changes. You then have
Mhm.
to make those changes. And I think that we find a lot of leaders and CEOs who are just like, oh gosh, it's quite chaotic. But then, like, what are we doing differently?
Yeah, exactly. So I think the moral of all of this is to say that people who report to chaotic CEOs, just in case you're wondering, Mr. or Mrs. CEO, people are like saying about you that you're all over the damn place.
Hmm.
That's what they're saying. You are
Yeah.
all over the damn place, and this is very stressful and frustrating to work like this
Hmm.
every single day, to come in and never quite know what the target is.
Yeah. Well, then I want to ask you the question we usually end with is if
Mm,
you are working with, let's say, let's look at it from a client perspective. You are working with
mhm.
a client who you know is the chaos creating CEO. You've popped the
Sure.
hood of that business, you've looked inside.
Yeah.
What is maybe not the one recommendation, but what is one recommendation that you would give?
Well, the biggest recommendation, because look, if you just say it to them, they might listen, but they're not really listening, because the moment you, as much as they say they want a coach to come in, they want a consultant to come in, they want you to help, but they also want you to affirm
Hmm.
them as the leader, right? And so I always lead with data. I don't have opinions about anything. I am just showing you like it is.
Hmm.
And so the first thing I always do is I get in there and I do anonymous surveys about just kind of like an employee engagement survey, but I kind of take it a few notches deeper. And I show them the data,
Hmm.
because the data is the data is the data is the data. And I'll show them like, "Hey, look, this is what your employees are saying is their experience."
Yeah.
And so it no longer becomes, "Oh, it was just Betty," or, "Oh, it was just Mike because I didn't give him that raise." If 70% or 60 or 50, hell, anything over 20% of your
Hmm.
employees are saying that they are working in chaotic environments, they are unclear in terms, so that's one of the questions I always ask. Are you clear on the organizational goals and directions? If they
Mhm.
are unclear, another question I ask is, are you clear on how your role impacts the organizational goals? If they are unclear on those things, then, you
Yeah.
know, it's time to stop for a minute and take a look at yourself. So I lead with data, and I essentially go from the angle of, look, this is what the team is saying. So let's come up with a strategy on how we can improve some of these things as a leadership team.
Yeah.
Right. And then based on that, then I might get a little bit stricter in terms of being more direct, right, with certain things. But I always lead with data first. And I always kind of come from that angle of, hey, we're doing some really great things, but man, we can level this up. But it just takes some intentionality and some strategic thinking.
Yeah.
Right. So that's normally the angle because depending on the client, but that's
Mhm.
that's normally the angle I start with. What about you?
Mhm. Yeah, and so you're working largely with you've been brought in to look at the whole picture,
Yes.
which I do that sometimes, but more often than not, what I'm doing is helping one person figure out what they can do better.
Yeah.
So, like, I have a couple clients right now. One of them is a CEO. We are
Mhm.
working on delaying reactions. We are not
Yep.
reacting to everything. Not every thought does not deserve your response. Every thought does not, somebody else's thought doesn't create an urgency. It creates something for you to consider. And
Yeah.
so we think about it. We assess the situation first. And sometimes that means literally, I have given my clients scripts before of this is
Yeah.
when you feel that urge to jump and dive into something new. I want you to take a deep breath and tell the other person, thank you for bringing that to my attention. I'm going to sit on this for a little bit and consider some pros and cons, and I'll get back with you. Or
Yeah.
just thank you for bringing this to my attention.
Yeah.
Just and say, I'm going to think about it. Let
Yeah.
people know your intention is not to react in that moment. Is not you can intentionally respond, but not
Sure.
say, "Yes, let's do that right now." Because I see
Yep.
that. I see people wanting to satisfy that urge to like acknowledge the other person, and so they're almost agreeing to too much instead
Yeah.
of saying, "Cool, let me
Or
think."
having an emotional response if what they hear is not what they like to hear.
Absolutely. Is that
Yeah. Yeah.
pause, that
Oh,
pushing
yeah.
pause in every moment, and that is really because you look at us, we tend to be we're quite responsive. We wanna do something, we go out there and freaking do it. We have an
Yep.
idea, we throw it out there. It it's it's the same for most other CEOs and founders I've worked with, so it has to
Yeah.
become a practice. That's often what I do. Delay your reaction, pump the brakes, let the other person know you're thinking about it, you're just not gonna give 'em an answer right now.
Yeah, and I think what we've both just demonstrated is that you've gotta look at this from a lot of different angles, and based on kind of what your position is or what's happening, there are different approaches, right? So you're very much the individual CEO kind of executive coaching, and I'm more of the team productivity performance perspective, but
Yeah.
even if you're that CEO and you're having that individualized coaching, it's always I always say it's always a good idea to know what's really happening because
Mhm.
there's so much happening under your nose and you have
Yeah.
no idea.
Especially if you're well liked and loved.
Oh
People aren't
yeah.
they're gonna respect you even if they think your ideas are awful.
Or if you're scary,
Yeah,
they're not gonna say anything because they're afraid you're gonna like fly off the freaking handle.
yeah. All of
So
this comes back down to rewarding stability, not just
yep,
new ideas and movement.
that's
So,
right. And there's a
okay,
place for new ideas and movement, right?
I was
It just
that was
has
my very last question I was gonna ask you,
ha.
is if you are that CEO, what would you recommend people do to keep those ideas flowing so that they don't lose that thing that makes them the edge, but still rein it in?
Well, I think we already said that, right? We said we would get somebody
Oh, yeah,
based on
we
where
did.
we are. We'd get somebody that kind of can focus on the daily operations, kind of like the carrying out of the vision, essentially. And then, you're coming up with your visions, but it's like you almost have to have that's a hard question because it really
Mhm.
depends on the size of your business, right? So if you're on a bigger scale, you've got a team. right?
Mhm.
Because your team, the team, those are the folks, at least in my opinion, those are the ones that are going to keep you grounded. So you can have those visions, but they must be grounded in some level of reality,
Mhm.
right? Financial reality, political realities and so on. So I think that, that's a big one. If you're just me, with me and me alone and nobody else, like how do I make room for that? Well, I think being a visionary and dreaming is always going to be a big part of your business because that's how you got started. That's how you got, whatever. But documenting those visions and putting them in a business plan in some way
Mhm.
and having some sort of process and system in place, but also taking a chill pill and realizing that these things take time. We don't have to do it all at once,
Mhm.
right? And so picking one or two of those things. So, like for both of us, a big one for us for 2026 was let's get this podcast up and running. We weren't even like, we want 1 million followers. We were like, no, no, we want to be consistent and we maybe want to end the year with like 10,000 followers.
Love.
Right?
Yeah.
But, just know that your vision and your dream, always make room for it, write it down, document it, but also plot it out on your business plan and
Mhm.
like your 5-year plan. Like because once you start taking that vision and you start plotting things out, then it becomes more of a strategy,
Mhm.
right? So vision is the dream, but strategy is actually what makes it real.
Yep, and then you hand those tasks over to the ultimate executor. The
Right.
CEO visionary is not necessarily the executor. I
Exactly. And if it's just you, that's okay, but make time to execute as
Yep.
well and
That's
find an
exactly
accountability partner.
that's it right there. I actually think the making time. Set time aside to dream.
Mhm.
Set
Mhm.
time aside for you to ideate with somebody else and get some good brainstorming going, but
Yeah.
make it a set aside dedicated time so that it doesn't infiltrate your entire working life.
Mhm.
It's gotta be given its time dedicated without it encroaching on strategy and
Yep.
execution.
Yep. And also, like, be very intentional and persnickety about who you share those visions and dreams with.
Yeah.
Honestly,
Yeah.
like, I think it's important to share, um, but everybody doesn't need to know all that.
No, because people give you ideas and input, and then you wanna take it into account, and that's where we are working on delaying our reaction,
Right.
not giving a response right away, and
Right.
just letting it kind of marinate, but it's also one way to prevent that is to not let everybody in all the time.
Yeah.
Comes back to boundaries around your time and your how
Yep.
vulnerable do you need to be with everyone?
Yep, yep. So, like, you and I, we meet every single Monday, and that's essentially what we do is we share our ideas, but we hold each other accountable to a lot of things too, and we
Mhm.
are quite vulnerable with each other. Um, but I think it's a good not I think I know it's an amazing relationship because you've said some things where I'm like, "Girl,
Don't do that. Yeah.
girl."
Yeah.
Right? And vice versa.
Yeah.
But I think that's important to, find the people around you that will call you out on your own BS, nurture your dream, but hold you accountable to actually following through.
Yep. Perfect. That
Perfect.
is that a good place to stop?
Maybe. I think so.
I think so. Last word. Last word. Chaos erodes trust. So if you are the chaos creating CEO, stop it.
Mhm. And chaos will slow down progress.
Yeah.
Period.
Boom.
Period.
All
Isn't
right.
that what the kids say? Period
All right.
with a T at the end,
So
right? And then they do this. What does this mean? What is
that's like
like
pocket, pocket,
Like, "Hey, girl."
pocket.
Okay. Alright, let's hit stop.
Let's wrap this
Cool.
one up before we get way too chaotic.
Yeah, okay.
All right.
Bye.
Bye.